I was sitting in my beat-up Honda Civic on a freezing February night, watching my younger brother Justin through the window of an upscale restaurant downtown. He was laughing with our parents, celebrating something I wasn't invited to. His brand new BMW sat parked right out front, gleaming under the streetlights. Meanwhile, I was wearing a pizza delivery uniform that reeked of grease and marinara sauce, juggling 2 jobs just to afford my tiny studio apartment. My phone buzzed with another delivery order. I put the car in drive and pulled away, trying not to cry from pure exhaustion and the crushing unfairness of it all. 2 hours later, I pulled up to my last delivery of the night. My fingers were numb from the cold, and my lower back throbbed from being on my feet since 6 in the morning. I worked as a bank teller during the day, then switched into this pizza delivery gig 4 nights a week. Between both jobs, I was pulling in maybe $38,000 a year before taxes. It was barely enough to survive. The address led me to a modest ranch-style house in a working-class neighborhood on the east side of town. The porch light was on, and I could see the paint peeling around the doorframe. I grabbed the pizza box and walked up the cracked concrete path, my breath making clouds in the frigid air. A man in his early 50s answered the door. He had graying hair and wore a faded flannel shirt over jeans. He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes widening slightly. "Are you Laura's son?" he asked. I blinked, surprised. "Yeah, I'm Braden. How did you know my mom?" "I'm Thomas, her brother, your uncle." My mind went blank for a second. Uncle Thomas. I had vague memories of him, from when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. He used to come to family gatherings, always smiling, always slipping me a $5 bill when my parents weren't looking. Then one day, he just stopped showing up. Nobody ever talked about him after that. "Come inside," Thomas said. "It's freezing out here. I really should get going. I have to return the delivery bag and clock out." "How many more deliveries do you have tonight?" This was the last one. "Then come in for 10 minutes, please." Something in his voice made me agree. I followed him into a clean, simply furnished living room. Photos lined the mantel above a small fireplace. Thomas gestured for me to sit on the couch. "I had no idea you were working a delivery job," he said, settling into an armchair across from me. "What happened?" "Last I heard through the grapevine, you were going to college." "I went to community college," I said. "Took me 5 years because I could only afford part-time. Graduated 3 years ago with an associate degree in business. Now I work at First National Bank as a teller, and I do this pizza thing at night to make ends meet." Thomas's expression darkened. "And Justin? What's he up to?" "Justin got the full ride," I said, and I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. Mom and Dad paid for his 4 years at State. Bought him a car when he graduated. Helped him with the down payment on a condo downtown. Got him connected with a marketing job at some big firm through Dad's friend. He's doing great. "And they didn't help you at all?" "They said they couldn't afford it. Money was tight," they said. I believed them for a while, until I saw how much they were giving Justin. Thomas leaned back in his chair, his jaw clenched. "That sounds exactly like your father." "My sister, too, I'm sorry to say." "Why did you stop coming around?" I asked. "I remember you from when I was little. Then you just disappeared." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "Your father borrowed $20,000 from me 15 years ago. His business was struggling, and he said he'd pay me back within 2 years. I gave him the money because Laura begged me to help. He never paid back a cent. When I finally asked about it, he blew up at me, called me greedy, said family shouldn't expect repayment. Your mother took his side. They cut me out completely." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. They never mentioned that. "I'm sure they didn't." Thomas studied me carefully. "What do you want, Braden? If you could do anything, what would it be?" The question caught me off guard. Nobody had asked me that in years. I wanted to start a property management business. Small scale, you know? Buy a duplex. Rent out half. Live in the other half. build from there. But I don't have the capital. I don't have the connections. I'm just trying to keep my head above water right now. Thomas nodded slowly. I own a real estate investment company. Started it 8 years ago. We manage about 40 properties across 3 counties. I could use an assistant, someone I can train, someone I can trust. The pay would be $65,000 a year with benefits, full-time. You could quit both these other jobs. I stared at him. Are you serious? Completely serious. Your family, Braden. Real family. Not the kind that plays favorites and forgets about you. I've kept tabs on you over the years through mutual friends. I've wanted to reach out. But I didn't want to cause trouble with your parents. But seeing you tonight, working yourself into the ground, while Justin gets everything handed to him, I can't stay silent anymore. You start Monday if you want the job. My throat felt tight. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Yes, I managed. Absolutely yes. Thomas smiled, and it transformed his whole face. He stood and walked to the mantel, picking up a framed photograph. He handed it to me. It showed a younger version of Thomas kneeling next to a little boy with a gap-toothed grin. The boy was hugging Thomas tightly. A birthday cake with 8 candles sat on a table in the background. That was your 8th birthday party, Thomas said quietly. 3 months before the falling out. You told me that day that when you grew up, you wanted to be just like me. I never forgot that. I looked at the photo, then at Thomas. Something that had been broken inside me for a very long time started to feel like maybe, just maybe, it could heal. 3 months felt like 3 years in the best possible way. Working with Thomas opened up a world I never knew existed. I learned about property valuations, tenant screening, lease agreements, maintenance scheduling, and investment strategies. Thomas was patient and thorough, treating me like a legitimate business partner rather than just an employee. I quit both my old jobs within the first week. The bank manager seemed annoyed, but I didn't care. The pizza place didn't even bother with an exit interview. I moved out of my cramped studio and into a decent 1-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. I bought new clothes that didn't smell like pizza. I started sleeping more than 5 hours a night. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was building something real. Then my mother called. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at the office, reviewing a lease renewal, when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken in nearly 4 months, not since I'd missed Justin's birthday dinner because of a pizza delivery shift. Braden, my mother said when I picked up. Her voice was sharp. Is it true you're working for Thomas? My stomach dropped. How did you know that? Gina from the bank mentioned it to Carol at church. Carol told me. Why would you do this to us? Do what? Get a better job? Thomas is not family, she snapped. He betrayed us. He tried to destroy your father's business. That's not what happened, Mom. He loaned Dad money that was never paid back. That's what he told you? He's lying, Braden. He's manipulating you. I'm 28 years old. I think I can figure out who's manipulating me. Don't you dare take that tone with me. You know what your father did for Thomas? He helped him get started in real estate. He introduced him to people. And Thomas stabbed him in the back. I felt my anger rising. Really? Because Thomas has been nothing but generous to me. Which is more than I can say for you and Dad. The line went silent for a moment. Then my father's voice came on. He must have been listening on another phone. You're working with Thomas. You're choosing him over your family. That's what you're doing. I'm choosing someone who actually helps me, I shot back. When have you ever done that? We gave you everything, my father said, his voice rising. We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head. You gave Justin everything. You gave me the bare minimum and made me feel grateful for it. Justin needed more support. He had potential. We invested in his future. The words hit me like a slap. And I didn't have potential? That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. My hands were shaking. I'm done with this conversation. I'm done apologizing for trying to build a life. If you keep working with Thomas, don't bother coming around, my father said coldly. You're making your choice clear. I guess I am, I said, and hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart pounding. Thomas appeared in the doorway of my small office. I heard some of that, he said quietly. Don't be. You have nothing to apologize for. He nodded, but his expression was troubled. They're going to make this difficult for you. Let them. 2 weeks passed. I threw myself into work, trying not to think about my parents' ultimatum. Then, on a Saturday morning, someone knocked on my apartment door. I opened it to find Justin standing there, wearing designer jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Hey, brother, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Can I come in? I wanted to say no, but curiosity won out. I stepped aside and let him enter. Justin looked around my apartment with an expression I couldn't quite read. Nice place. Definitely a step up from that studio you were in. What do you want, Justin? Can't I just visit my brother? You've never visited me before. Not once. Justin's smile faltered slightly. Yeah, well. I heard about your new job. Congratulations. Working with Uncle Thomas. That's cool. How did you hear about it? Mom told me. She's pretty upset. I noticed. Justin sat down on my couch without being invited. Look, I'll be honest. I wanted to talk to you about Thomas's business. He's doing pretty well, right? I was thinking maybe there might be some investment opportunities. You know, get in on the ground floor of something. I stared at him. Mom and Dad sent you here, didn't they? What? No. I'm just interested in business opportunities. You're interested in getting information for them. Maybe finding something they can use against Thomas. Justin's expression hardened. You're being paranoid. Am I? Because you've never shown any interest in my life before. You didn't visit me once, when I was working 2 jobs and barely surviving. But now that I'm working with someone Mom and Dad hate, suddenly you show up. Justin stood up. I was trying to be nice, trying to reconnect. You were trying to spy. Get out. Braden. Come on. Get out of my apartment, Justin. His friendly facade dropped completely. He walked to the door, then turned back. You're making a mistake. Cutting off the family, burning bridges. That's going to have consequences. I'll take my chances. He left, slamming the door behind him. I called Thomas and told him about the visit. He listened quietly, then said, We need to be careful. Document everything. Keep all our business files secure. If your family is looking for ammunition, we can't give them any. You think they'd actually try to hurt your business? Braden. They destroyed my relationship with my own sister over $20,000. Yes, I think they'd try to hurt my business. The next day, Thomas called me at home, his voice tight with stress. We have a problem. Someone filed a complaint with the State Real Estate Commission. They're claiming we engaged in fraudulent property transactions. My blood went cold. What? The complaint is anonymous, but it's detailed, really detailed. It includes information about specific properties, dates, transactions. Someone with inside knowledge. Do you think it's Justin? I don't know. But the timing is suspicious. The commission is opening an investigation. This could shut us down for months, Braden. Even if we're cleared, the damage to our reputation could be devastating. I sat down heavily on my couch, my mind racing. What do? We cooperate fully. We organize every file, every record, every receipt. We prove we've done nothing wrong. He paused. I'm sorry, Braden. I brought you into this, and now you're caught in the crossfire. This isn't your fault, I said firmly. And I'm not going anywhere. But as I hung up the phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much, much worse. The state investigators arrived on a gray Wednesday morning 2 weeks later. 2 auditors in crisp suits, carrying briefcases and wearing expressions that suggested they'd already decided we were guilty. Thomas met them in the conference room while I gathered the files they requested: property records, lease agreements, bank statements, inspection reports, tax documents. Everything laid out in neat folders, organized chronologically. The audit took 3 days. They went through everything with meticulous attention, making notes, asking pointed questions, taking copies of documents. Thomas remained calm and professional throughout, answering every question honestly. But I could see the stress wearing on him. He looked older, more tired. On the 3rd day, I was alone in the file room, pulling more records, when I noticed something odd. A property inspection report from 4 years ago, before I'd started working there, had a signature I didn't recognize. I cross-referenced it with other documents and realized the inspector's license number didn't match any of our regular contractors. I dug deeper, pulling more old files. 3 properties from that same time period had similar irregularities. Inspections signed off by people who either didn't exist or whose licenses had expired. The inspections themselves looked legitimate, but the credentials were fake. My hands went cold. Someone had been cutting corners, falsifying inspection documents. If the auditors found this, it would confirm their suspicions of fraud. I found Thomas in his office, head in his hands. I closed the door behind me. "We have a problem," I said quietly, and showed him what I'd found. Thomas's face went pale as he reviewed the documents. "This was before you started. This was when Gerald was still my partner." Gerald, Thomas's former business partner, who'd left the company 2 years ago after a falling out. I'd never met him, but Thomas had mentioned him a few times, usually with thinly veiled frustration. "Gerald did this?" I asked. "He must have. I never saw these reports. He handled the inspection process back then." Thomas rubbed his face. "He always wanted to cut corners to maximize profit. I refused. That's why we split. I thought he just left. I didn't know he'd been doing this behind my back. What do we do?" Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he straightened up, his jaw set. "We tell them. We voluntarily disclose everything to the commission. We show them we discovered this ourselves, that we're cooperating fully. It's the only way to maintain any credibility. But the fine, the penalties, I know. But it's the right thing to do. And maybe, if we're honest, they'll see we're not the bad guys here." We spent the rest of that day documenting everything we'd found. Thomas called our lawyer, who agreed with the approach. The next morning, we presented everything to the auditors. Their expressions shifted from suspicion to something closer to respect. They asked more questions, took more notes. Then they left. The waiting was torture. Days stretched into weeks. Meanwhile, the damage to Thomas's business was mounting. 2 major clients pulled their properties from our management, spooked by the investigation. The negative publicity spread through the local real estate community like wildfire. Thomas had to lay off 3 employees, keeping only the essential staff. I was one of the people he kept. But my salary was cut to $40,000. I took it without complaint. Thomas was barely keeping the lights on. I moved to a cheaper apartment to save money. Started driving for a rideshare service on weekends to make extra cash. It felt like I was sliding backward, returning to the life I'd worked so hard to escape. During one rideshare pickup on a Saturday evening, an older man got into my back seat. I glanced in the rearview mirror and felt my stomach drop. It was my father. He'd gotten in before recognizing me. Now we made eye contact in the mirror, and his expression shifted from neutral to something colder. We drove in silence for several blocks. The GPS said 12 more minutes to his destination. "This is what working with Thomas gets you," my father finally said. "You're right back where you started, driving people around for spare change." I didn't respond. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You could have had a stable life," he continued. Could have stayed at the bank, worked your way up. Instead, you threw your lot in with someone bitter and vengeful. Thomas isn't bitter or vengeful, I said quietly. He's honest. That's more than I can say for some people. You don't know what you're talking about. I know he gave me opportunities you never did. I know he treated me with respect. I know he paid back his debts. My father made a disgusted sound. Still hung up on that money. It was 15 years ago, Braden. Let it go. It's not about the money. It's about the principle. It's about keeping your word. We didn't speak for the rest of the ride. When I pulled up to his house, my mother was standing on the front porch. She saw me through the windshield, and her face went rigid. My father got out without a word, without a tip, without even closing the door properly. I had to lean over and pull it shut myself. I drove away. My vision blurred with tears. I refused to let fall. That night, lying in my cramped apartment, I seriously considered giving up, moving to another city. Starting over somewhere nobody knew my name or my history, just walking away from all of it. But something stubborn in me refused to quit. Thomas had taken a chance on me. He'd shown me a better path. I couldn't abandon him now. When he needed support most, I fell asleep telling myself tomorrow would be better. I woke up to my phone ringing at 6 a.m. Dozens of missed calls. Texts from people I barely knew. My heart pounding, I opened the messages. Then I saw my own face staring back at me from a screenshot. A social media profile I'd never created, under my name, filled with violent, threatening posts. Posts about Justin. About my parents. Specific threats. Photos of their house. Photos of Justin's workplace. I'm going to make them pay for everything, one post read. They'll regret what they did to me. Another. I know where they live. I know their schedules. Justice is coming. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My door shook with heavy pounding. Police! Open up! I opened the door to find 2 officers, hands resting on their weapons. Braden Patterson? One asked. Yes. That's me. But you're under arrest for criminal threatening and cyber harassment. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. This is a mistake. I didn't post those things. Someone created a fake profile. Tell it to the judge. Hands behind your back. Now, they handcuffed me right there in my doorway, walked me past my staring neighbors, and put me in the back of a police car. At the station, they read me my rights, took my fingerprints, my mugshot, put me in a holding cell with 2 other men who looked like they'd been there all night. A public defender came to see me hours later. Young guy, overworked, already exhausted even though it was only 10 a.m. The evidence looks bad, he said bluntly. The profile has personal details only you would know. Childhood stories. Inside family information. The IP address traces to your neighborhood. Someone framed me. My brother, probably. Or his girlfriend's family. They've been targeting me. And my uncle's business. The public defender looked skeptical. Do you have proof of that? There was a complaint filed with the State Real Estate Commission. Anonymous. But it had to be them. That's not proof. That's speculation. He flipped through his notes. Bail is set at $10,000. Can you make that? No. Then you're staying here until your arraignment. Thomas was traveling for business, trying to salvage client relationships in another city. I couldn't reach him. He didn't even know I'd been arrested. I spent 3 days in jail. 3 days of cold metal benches, terrible food, and the constant noise of other inmates. 3 days of feeling my life disintegrating around me. On the 4th day, Thomas finally returned and posted my bail. I walked out of that jail feeling hollowed out, broken, in a way I'd never experienced before. Thomas hugged me tight in the parking lot. I'm so sorry. I came as soon as I heard. We're going to fight this. I've already hired you a criminal defense attorney. Best one in the state. This is going to bankrupt you, I said, my voice cracking. I don't care. You're family. Real family. We protect each other. But as we drove away from the jail, I couldn't shake the feeling that Justin and my parents had finally won. The criminal defense attorney Thomas hired was named Patricia Reynolds. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, and had a reputation for being ruthless in court. She cost $15,000 just for the retainer. Our first meeting was in her downtown office, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. The profile was sophisticated, she said when I finished. Whoever created it knew enough about you to make it believable. Family details, childhood memories, inside jokes. That kind of information doesn't come from public records. My brother Justin knows all of that. So do my parents. Can you prove they created the profile? No. But they've been targeting me and Thomas for months. The complaint to the state commission, the harassment, showing up at my apartment, that establishes motive. But it's not proof. Patricia tapped her pen against her notepad. However, the prosecution has to prove you created this profile beyond a reasonable doubt. If we can introduce enough uncertainty, enough alternative explanations, we might get the charges dismissed. She hired a digital forensics expert, a former FBI analyst who now did private consulting. His name was Marcus Chen, and he spent 2 weeks analyzing the fake profile, tracing IP addresses, examining metadata. He came back with interesting findings. The profile was created using a VPN to mask the true IP address, Marcus explained in Patricia's office. But VPNs aren't perfect. I traced the connection back to an IP address registered to an apartment building in the downtown area. My brother Justin lives downtown, I said, leaning forward. What's the address? Patricia asked. I gave it to her. Marcus checked his notes and nodded. Same building. Different unit. But same building. It wasn't proof Justin created the profile, but it was something. Patricia dug deeper, investigating Justin's girlfriend Amber and her family. That's when we learned Amber had a cousin named Dylan, who worked in IT and specialized in cybersecurity. This is starting to look like a coordinated attack, Patricia said. But proving it is another matter. We need something concrete. A witness. A confession. Something. Meanwhile, the arrest had made the local newspaper's crime section. My mugshot was right there on page 5, under the headline, Local Man Arrested for Online Threats. The article mentioned I worked in real estate, which meant anyone who searched my name would find it. My apartment complex sent me a letter informing me they wouldn't be renewing my lease. The arrest violated their terms, even though I hadn't been convicted of anything. I had 30 days to move out. I couldn't afford another apartment. The legal fees were eating through what little savings I had. Thomas offered to let me stay in his spare bedroom temporarily. I accepted, feeling like a complete failure. I was suspended from work pending the outcome of the case. No income except the rideshare driving, which barely covered my phone bill and gas. I was 30 days away from being homeless, facing felony charges, watching everything I'd built crumble into dust. Then I got a Facebook message from someone I didn't know. My name is Derek. I'm Gerald's nephew. I have information about what Justin and Amber did to you, but I'm scared to come forward publicly. Can we meet? I showed the message to Patricia. She was immediately suspicious. Could be a setup. Could be someone trying to gather more evidence against you. Or it could be legitimate. We need something, Patricia. Anything. She considered for a moment. I'll go with you. Neutral location. Public place. We record everything. We arranged to meet Derek at a diner 40 minutes outside of town, far from anyone who might recognize us. Patricia brought a voice recorder and her paralegal as a witness. Derek was in his late 20s, nervous, constantly glancing around like he expected someone to burst through the door. He had the same dark hair and sharp features as Gerald, based on the photos I'd seen. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup. "I wasn't sure if you'd come. Why reach out now?" Patricia asked, her tone professional but not unkind. "Because Amber's been bragging about it. At family gatherings. To her friends. She thinks it's funny. She showed people screenshots of the fake profile before it went live, saying, 'Watch what happens to Braden now.' My girlfriend was there. She saw the whole thing. My heart started pounding." "Your girlfriend saw the screenshots?" "She took photos of Amber's phone screen. Not great quality. But you can see the profile, the posts, the dates. All before the profile went public." Patricia leaned forward. "Why would your girlfriend do that?" "Because she thought it was messed up. She didn't know what to do with the information, but she kept the photos just in case. When I told her about meeting you, she gave them to me." Derek pulled out his phone and showed us the photos. Blurry, taken at an angle, but visible enough. Amber's phone screen showing the fake profile, showing posts that matched what had later appeared publicly. The date stamp on the photos was 3 days before the profile went live. Patricia took photos of Derek's photos with her own phone. "This is good. This could be enough to get the charges dismissed." "Would your girlfriend be willing to testify?" Derek hesitated. "She's scared. Gerald is my uncle, and he's not a good guy. He's got connections, and he's vindictive. If this comes back on us, our lives could get really difficult." "I understand," Patricia said. "But Braden is facing felony charges for something he didn't do. If you have evidence that can clear him, you have a moral obligation to come forward." Derek looked at me, his expression tortured. "My Uncle Gerald ruined my dad's business 10 years ago. Used the same kind of tactics. Lies, manipulation, fake evidence. My dad never recovered. Lost everything. I've watched my family destroy people for years, and I'm sick of it. That's why I'm here. But I'm terrified of what will happen if they find out." "We can protect you," Patricia said. "Whistleblower protections, protective orders if necessary. But we need your girlfriend's testimony, and those original photos." Derek nodded slowly. "I'll talk to her. I'll try." 3 days later, Derek's girlfriend, a quiet woman named Rachel, agreed to provide the photos and a written statement. Patricia took everything to the prosecutor's office. The charges against me were dismissed within a week. I felt a surge of relief so powerful I nearly collapsed. But the relief was short-lived, because Patricia called me that same afternoon with bad news. "The prosecutor won't file charges against Justin or Amber," she said. "They claim there's not enough evidence to prove who actually created the profile. The IP address and Rachel's testimony established that Amber had advanced knowledge, but not that she or Justin created it themselves. It could have been Dylan, the IT cousin. Without more proof, the prosecutor won't move forward." "So they just get away with it?" I asked, my voice rising. "I'm sorry, Braden. Sometimes the legal system fails people." But it got worse. The day after the charges were dismissed, Justin filed a civil lawsuit against me for defamation. He claimed I'd falsely accused him and Amber of crimes, damaged their reputations, and caused them emotional distress. He was seeking $200,000 in damages. Patricia looked over the lawsuit and shook her head grimly. "This is retaliation, pure and simple. He knows you can't afford to fight this. He's trying to bleed you dry. Can we win? Maybe. But civil cases can drag on for years. Discovery, depositions, motions, trial. Even if we win, the legal fees could be $100,000 or more. And if we lose, you'll owe him the $200,000 plus his legal fees." I sat in Patricia's office, staring at the lawsuit papers, feeling the walls closing in. What do I do? Some people in your position settle. Admit to no wrongdoing but agree to pay a smaller amount just to make it go away. Justin might accept $50,000 to drop it. I don't have $50,000. I don't have $5,000. Patricia's expression was sympathetic, but helpless. Then we fight it and hope for the best. But I need to be honest with you, Braden. This could destroy you financially. It could destroy Thomas too if he keeps supporting you. You need to think very carefully about whether fighting is worth it. That night, I lay awake in Thomas's spare bedroom, staring at the ceiling. My entire life had become a legal nightmare. Criminal charges dismissed but civil lawsuit pending. No job. No apartment. No savings. No future I could see clearly. I thought about giving up, just settling the lawsuit for whatever I could scrape together, declaring bankruptcy if I had to, and starting over somewhere far away. But then I thought about Justin's smirk, my parents' cold dismissal, the way they destroyed me systematically, deliberately, and felt no remorse. I couldn't let them win. I fell asleep with that stubborn determination burning in my chest, even as the weight of everything threatened to crush me. 2 months passed, in a blur of legal meetings, stress, and barely suppressed panic. The civil lawsuit moved forward. Justin's attorney was aggressive, filing motion after motion, demanding extensive discovery, making the process as expensive and time-consuming as possible. Patricia did her best to fight back, but every action cost money, every deposition, every document review, every court appearance. The bills piled up. Thomas paid them without complaint, but I could see the strain on him. His business was still recovering from the state investigation and the client losses. He couldn't afford this any more than I could. I picked up more rideshare shifts, working 12, 14-hour days. I was exhausted constantly, running on coffee and fear. The lawsuit hung over me like a blade, ready to drop and cut away whatever future I might still have. Then, out of nowhere, my mother called. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Braden," she said. And her voice was different. Smaller. Broken. "Please, I need you to come to the house. I can't. Justin's lawsuit specifically prohibits me from contacting any of you. The restraining order was dropped when the criminal charges were dismissed. Please, this is important. Your father and I need to talk to you." Every instinct told me it was a trap. Another manipulation. But the desperation in her voice sounded real. "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up. I told Thomas about the call. He frowned, clearly worried. It could be legitimate, or it could be them gathering more ammunition for Justin's lawsuit. "I know, but you want to go." "Part of me does. Part of me needs to know what this is about." Thomas nodded slowly. "Then go. But record everything on your phone. Protect yourself." The next day, I drove to my parents' house for the first time in nearly a year. The neighborhood looked the same, but something felt different. The lawn was overgrown. Paint was peeling on the shutters. My father's car, usually immaculate, had a dent in the front bumper. I knocked on the door. My mother answered, and I barely recognized her. She'd aged 10 years in the last one. Her hair was more gray than brown. Her face was haggard, lines etched deep around her eyes and mouth. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly, stepping aside to let me in. The house was messier than I'd ever seen it. Dishes in the sink. Mail piled on the counter. My father sat at the kitchen table, looking just as worn down as my mother. "Sit down," my father said. Not a demand, almost a plea. I sat, my phone recording in my pocket. "We made a terrible mistake," my mother said, her voice shaking. "With Justin. With you. With everything." I waited, saying nothing. 6 months ago, my father continued, staring at his hands. Justin came to us with an investment opportunity. Amber's father, Gerald, had this cryptocurrency venture. "Guaranteed returns," he said. 20% profit in 6 months. We could triple our retirement savings in 2 years. My stomach dropped. We gave him everything, my mother said, tears starting to fall. $150,000. Our entire retirement account. He promised it was safe. Promised it was legitimate. It was a scam, my father said flatly. Complete fraud. The money's gone. All of it. Gerald disappeared. Moved to another state. Won't return our calls. And Justin? I asked, my voice cold. My mother's face crumpled. Justin knew. He knew it was a scam. Gerald paid him $20,000 as a finder's fee for bringing us in as investors. His own parents. He took money to destroy us financially. The room went silent except for my mother's quiet crying. Justin's gone, my father said. Moved to Oregon with Amber. Blocked our numbers. Won't respond to emails. We haven't heard from him in 2 months. We're about to lose the house. The bank started foreclosure proceedings last week. I sat there, processing this. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction. Justice. They'd chosen Justin over me my entire life, and Justin had destroyed them. But mostly I just felt tired. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because we need help, my mother said desperately. We need money. We need someone to co-sign a loan so we can keep the house. Your Uncle Thomas has money. His business is doing well. We thought maybe you could ask him, or maybe he'd hire your father, or... Stop, I said, holding up my hand. Let me make sure I understand. You're asking me to help you after everything you've done to me? You're our son, my mother said. Family helps family. The audacity of those words, after years of them helping Justin while leaving me to struggle, was almost too much. You never helped me, I said quietly. When I was working 2 jobs and barely surviving, where were you? When I needed help with college, where were you? When Justin and Amber framed me and I ended up in jail, where were you? We thought you were guilty, my father said weakly. You thought I was guilty because you wanted to believe it. Because it was easier than admitting Justin might be the problem. We were wrong, my mother sobbed. We were wrong about everything. Please, Braden, we're begging you. I looked at both of them, these people who'd raised me but never really seen me. And I made a decision. I'll think about it, I said, standing up. But I'm not making any promises. As I turned to leave, my father spoke again. There's something else you should know. Something we should have told you a long time ago. I turned back. My father's face was gray, his expression tortured. The reason we always favored Justin. The reason we gave him everything. It's because of what happened 25 years ago. What are you talking about? My mother covered her face with her hands. My father forced himself to meet my eyes. When you were 3 years old, your mother had an affair with a man from the next town, someone wealthy. She got pregnant with Justin. The man wanted nothing to do with the baby, but he gave me $50,000 to keep quiet and raise the boy as my own. The words didn't make sense at first. My brain couldn't process them. Justin isn't your full brother, my father continued, each word seeming to cost him. He's your half-brother. I agreed to raise him, but I resented him every day. And I resented your mother for what she did. But because of that $50,000, because I'd taken that money, I felt obligated to give Justin every advantage, to make the lie worth it. And what about me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You reminded me of the betrayal, my father said, his voice breaking. Every time I looked at you, I remembered what came before. The happy family we'd been. You were the child from when things were good. Justin was the child from when everything fell apart. I know it's not fair. I know it's not right. But that's the truth. My mother was sobbing openly now. We're so sorry, Braden. We destroyed your childhood because of our own failures. We gave Justin everything because of guilt and obligation, and we gave you nothing because seeing you hurt too much. I stood there, frozen, as 28 years of pain suddenly made horrible, twisted sense. "Get out," I said quietly. "Braden, get out of this house. Both of you. Right now." "But this is our house," my mother said, confused through her tears. "Not for long," I said. "You're losing it, remember? So get out. And don't ever contact me again." I walked out, got in my car, and drove away. I made it 3 blocks before I had to pull over, because I couldn't see through my tears. Everything hurt. Every memory. Every moment of feeling less than. Every time they chose Justin over me. All of it rooted in a lie. A betrayal. A payment. I called Thomas and told him everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Come home. We'll figure this out together." Home. He'd called his house home. And for the first time in my life, I understood what that word really meant. I spent 3 days in a fog, barely functional. Thomas gave me space, but made sure I ate, made sure I slept, made sure I knew I wasn't alone. Patricia called with updates on the lawsuit, but the words barely registered. Then, on the 4th day, I woke up angry. Not sad, not hurt. Angry. Justin had taken everything from me. My childhood, because his very existence created the dynamic that destroyed my parents' marriage. My young adulthood, because every resource went to him. And now my present and future, because he'd framed me, sued me, and disappeared without consequences. I wasn't going to let him get away with it anymore. I called Patricia and asked her to dig deeper into Gerald's investment scheme. If it was actually fraud, there had to be evidence. There had to be other victims. Patricia connected me with Derek again. Derek had kept tabs on his uncle, motivated by his own family's history with Gerald's schemes. He introduced me to 2 other people Gerald had scammed in the past 5 years. Both had lost significant amounts of money. Neither had reported it because Gerald had been careful to structure the scams in ways that made legal action difficult. But this time was different. This time Gerald had run a full-scale securities fraud, involving multiple victims, and potentially crossing state lines. Patricia suggested we contact the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The FBI agent assigned to our case was a woman named Sarah Chen, mid-40s, all business. She listened to our story, reviewed the evidence Derek had gathered, and got very interested very quickly. "This fits a pattern we've been investigating," Agent Chen said in our meeting. "Multiple complaints about cryptocurrency investment scams in this region over the past 3 years. Different names, but similar methods. If Gerald is part of a larger network, or even just a repeat offender, we can build a case." "What about Justin?" I asked. "He recruited investors, took payment for it. If we can prove he knew it was a scam, he's a co-conspirator. That's wire fraud. Potentially. Multiple felonies." Over the next month, the FBI investigation moved fast. They traced Gerald's financial records, found evidence of the fraudulent cryptocurrency wallets, identified 42 victims across 3 states who'd lost a combined $2.3 million. They found evidence of Justin's $20,000 finder's fee payment, plus emails between Justin and Gerald discussing how to convince investors the opportunity was legitimate. Justin had known it was a scam. He'd helped sell it anyway. He'd destroyed his own parents financially for $20,000. The FBI arrested Gerald in Idaho, where he'd been hiding out under an assumed name. They arrested Justin in Oregon a week later. Both were charged with wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy. Federal charges. Serious prison time if convicted. The news hit our local media like a bomb. The same newspaper that had published my mugshot now ran front-page stories about Justin's arrest. The Golden Boy, the successful marketing professional, revealed as a con artist who'd defrauded his own parents. Justin's defamation lawsuit against me was immediately dropped. His attorney withdrew from the case, wanting nothing to do with the criminal charges. Without the lawsuit hanging over me, I could finally breathe. Thomas's business began to recover almost immediately. The scandal around Justin and Gerald vindicated Thomas in the eyes of the real estate community. He hadn't been involved in anything shady. He'd been the target of a coordinated attack by corrupt people. Clients started coming back. New clients reached out. Within 3 months, Thomas's company was more profitable than it had been before the state investigation. Thomas called me into his office on a bright morning in May. "I've been thinking," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This company wouldn't have survived without you. Your integrity, your loyalty, your willingness to do the right thing, even when it cost you everything. I want to make you a partner. 15% equity. Your salary goes to $95,000 base, plus profit sharing." I stared at him, speechless. "You've earned this," Thomas said firmly. "And I need someone I can trust completely to help grow this company. That's you." I don't know what to say. Say yes. Yes, I managed, my throat tight with emotion. 6 months later, I used my first substantial bonus to put a down payment on a small duplex in a decent neighborhood. I rented out 1 unit and lived in the other, my first investment property, the beginning of the future I dreamed about for so long. Justin's trial happened in federal court. He pleaded guilty as part of a deal, agreeing to testify against Gerald in exchange for a lighter sentence. He got 5 years in federal prison. Gerald got 10 years. My parents lost their house to foreclosure. I heard about it through mutual acquaintances but didn't reach out. They tried calling me a few times, leaving voicemails I never listened to. Then, 2 months after they moved out of the house, my mother called from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Braden," she said, her voice small. "Please don't hang up. I'm listening. We found a rental, a 2-bedroom apartment on the south side. But we can't afford the deposit and first month's rent. We're living in a motel right now. Weekly rates. We're running out of money." I was quiet, waiting. "We know we don't deserve your help," my father's voice came on. They were on speaker. "We know we failed you as parents, but we're asking anyway, because we don't know what else to do." I thought about everything they'd put me through. The years of neglect, the favoritism, the active sabotage when I finally found success. Part of me wanted to say no and hang up, let them suffer the consequences of their choices. But I wasn't them. I didn't want to become them. "Send me the rental information," I said. "I'll pay your first month's rent and the security deposit. That's $5,000 probably. After that, you're on your own. Get jobs. Figure it out. I'm not going to support you long term." "That's not enough," my mother said, a hint of her old demanding tone creeping back. "That's what I'm offering. Take it or leave it." Silence. Then my father said, "We'll take it. Thank you." I helped them move into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood. Paid the first month's rent and deposit like I'd promised. Helped carry some of their furniture up 2 flights of stairs. Then I left. Over the next 2 years, I saw them occasionally. Thanksgiving and Christmas at Thomas's house. At his invitation, not mine. The relationship remained cordial, but distant. They worked low-wage jobs, struggling but surviving. They never apologized for the past, not really. But they also never asked me for money again. I didn't forgive them exactly, but I made peace with what had happened. They were broken people who'd made terrible choices, and I'd paid the price for it. But I'd survived. More than survived. I'd thrived. 2 years after the worst period of my life, I stood on the porch of my 3rd rental property, a small, single-family home I'd just finished renovating. The previous tenant had trashed the place, but Thomas and I had worked together to fix it up. New paint, new flooring, updated fixtures. It looked great. My phone rang. "Thomas, congratulations," he said when I answered. "Property number 3. I remember when you told me your dream was to own just 1 duplex. Look at you now. I learned from the best, I said, smiling. How's Carolyn? Carolyn. I'd met her 8 months ago at a real estate networking event. She worked in commercial property development. Smart and kind and completely unimpressed by my history of family drama. She knew everything about my past and loved me anyway. She's great. We're looking at a property together next week. Potential flip. Partnership with your girlfriend. That's serious. It is, I agreed, and felt happy saying it. Thomas's real estate company had expanded into 2 additional cities. I manage the entire property management division now, overseeing 15 employees and more than 80 properties. My income last year had broken $140,000 with profit sharing. I drove a reliable car, lived in my own home, had savings in the bank, and a retirement account that was actually growing. I dated someone who respected me. I had work that challenged me and gave me purpose. Justin would be released from prison in 3 more years. I didn't know what he'd do then, and I didn't particularly care. He'd have a felony record, ruined credit, and no family support. He'd built his entire life on taking shortcuts and exploiting people, and it had finally caught up to him. Gerald was still in prison and would be for years. Amber had disappeared. Last I heard, she'd moved to California. My parents continued working their modest jobs, living in their modest apartment. We maintained our distant but civil relationship. I'd never be close to them, but I'd stopped being angry at them. They were just people who'd made bad choices and had to live with the consequences. Like everyone else. The biggest lesson I'd learned through all of it was this: being overlooked and underestimated wasn't the worst thing that could happen to someone. It forced me to become self-reliant. It forced me to develop real skills, real resilience, real character. Justin had been given everything and developed nothing. When the first real challenge hit him, he crumbled and made terrible choices because he'd never learned how to struggle honestly. My hardship had been a gift in disguise. It taught me the value of hard work. It taught me integrity. It taught me that people who show up for you when you have nothing are the only people who matter. Thomas had shown up. He'd taken a chance on a pizza delivery driver and changed both our lives. That was real family. Not blood, but choice. Not obligation, but love. I looked at the renovated house, at the for rent sign I was about to put in the yard, and felt something I'd never really experienced before. Pride. In myself. In what I'd built. In who I'd become. The people who tried to destroy me had failed. I'd survived, thrived, and built a life worth living. They couldn't take that away from me. Nobody could. I thought about that freezing February night 2 years ago, delivering pizza, watching Justin celebrate in a restaurant while I struggled just to survive. If I could go back and tell that version of myself what was coming, what would I say? Hold on. It gets worse before it gets better, but it does get better. You're stronger than you know. And the people who doubt you, who betray you, who try to break you, they're doing you a favor. They're showing you exactly who they are, and they're motivating you to become someone better. I put up the for rent sign and drove home. Carolyn was cooking dinner when I walked in. The smell of garlic and tomatoes filled the kitchen. She smiled when she saw me. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Perfect," I said, and meant it. That night, as we ate dinner and talked about our plans for the weekend, I realized something profound. I was happy. Genuinely. Deeply happy. Not because everything was perfect, but because I'd fought for this life and earned it. The people who'd tried to keep me down had lost. I'd won. Not because I'd destroyed them, but because I'd refused to let them destroy me. That was the real victory. Before I finish, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Have you ever felt like you were fighting an uphill battle while someone else got everything handed to them? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if it gave you hope or reminded you that you're stronger than your circumstances, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories about overcoming hardship and finding success against the odds. And share this with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone in their struggle. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you treat yourself, and by the choices you make when times get hard. Stay strong, keep fighting, and remember that the people who doubt you are just giving you fuel to prove them wrong. Take care of yourselves out there.